Today we're going to be talking about how to drive key account growth. Making sure that your most important customers increase their spending with your company is crucial to revenue growth. Leaders of most B2B companies recognize that it's far less expensive to sell more business to existing accounts than it is to market to and sell to new customers. However, in our conversations with corporate leaders, we frequently come to recognize that they have a lack of clarity around how to optimize the growth potential represented by their current customers. For many companies, there's a massive opportunity to gain more sales from existing accounts than is currently being realized. But how do you gain more wallet share? Well, that's exactly what we'll be discussing during this webinar. So let me share today's agenda with you. First off, most organizations aren't fully serving their customers because they don't understand their customer accounts at a deep enough level. We'll show you why this is happening and what to do about it. There are 5 strategies for growing your accounts, but many companies only utilize 1 or 2. So I'll share a framework with you to help you choose the right strategies to grow your key accounts. Then, helping your customers buy is all about having empathy for them and helping them to solve their challenges. I'll share our executive buyer insight research with you so you understand how your salespeople need to change in order to get aligned with buyers to drive key account growth. And lastly, the way that companies buy really has substantially changed. Internal decision making and getting funding approvals in companies has gotten far more complex and challenging for your buyers. I'll show you why and provide you with a framework to help you get better at adapting to this new reality. So let's start optimizing your key account opportunities by better understanding your accounts and where to find new money. Our research shows that on average, companies only sell 5% of their total portfolio of offerings to any given account. We also find that there are many new buyers or buying centers within organizations who are not buying products or services that are being used elsewhere in the company. So we ask questions like, what is an account? Where is an account? Who are the decision makers? Where are decisions made? Where is their budget? And where is their need? Many of these sorts of simple questions are not sufficiently explored by salespeople, sales managers, sales operations leaders, or marketing organizations. In fact, we observe that many accounts, and I say accounts in quotes, are significantly underdeveloped because they're just not well understood. So let's start with that basic question of what is an account? What I'm illustrating here is an example of a headquarters of a large company who is a key account with leaders in multiple business functions. The sort of fabric image that you see represents the processes and workflows that those leaders are responsible for. But don't worry about that for now. We'll just focus on the organizational structure itself, and I'll come back to that later. You may have substantial amounts of business coming out of this one buying center, such as IT or marketing or operations, and many reps perceive that they have all or a high percentage of wallet share within this account. But is this an account? What about all of the other departments in the organization? Do your reps have accurate information in your database as to who other potential buyers are in other parts of the company? Those are parts of the account too, right? What about a division of this company that has a completely different name? Is your sales team even aware of that business? Wouldn't leaders in that company have a need for what you provide as well? Are they part of the account? What about the company's operations in different states or different regions or even different countries? Are they part of the account and the account plan? What visibility do you have into who the buyers are and what their needs are, how they make decisions, and are those needs being addressed? And what about joint ventures of the company? Are they part of the account? Are they part of the account plan? The point is that many of the companies that your reps call on are very complex, and we see that there's a significant lack of visibility into what real opportunities are in an account. This is obviously challenging from the perspective of executing key account growth strategies, because you absolutely must understand your accounts at a deeper level. We suggest that you use the already well-established legal and financial organizing structures and data that are available from companies like Dun & Bradstreet in order to get visibility into your real growth opportunities so you can plan for them. Let me give you an example of a large complex account and how companies like yours leave money on the table by not fully understanding accounts and planning for them. Here's FedEx's headquarters. Again, is this an account? FedEx is actually comprised of 4 business segments, each with 4 separate business units, and every segment and business unit operates globally. They compete collectively, operate independently, and manage collaboratively to create commerce solutions for their customers. Well, we worked with a vendor who had pursued an opportunity for a year and a half for an IT storage requirement at one of FedEx's business segments. The rep and senior management in the vendor company were totally high-fiving because they had sold a $3.6 million contract to the FedEx account. But here's the thing. We looked at FedEx's total revenue and made some research-based assumptions on IT budget as a percentage of revenue and what portion of that would be spent on infrastructure, and of that infrastructure spend, what percentage was spent on storage. What we determined was that $395 million is estimated spending on storage across FedEx. So this analysis helped that company to understand that they actually had just earned less than 1% of FedEx's total wallet share for storage. And they had absolutely no idea of the real opportunity, nor did they have a plan for going after it. So think of how focused they got on pursuing the bigger opportunity once they were aware of it.
Hey, Mark, this is
Tim.
You know, this I think is absolutely a crucial element to wallet share analysis, which everybody should be doing at a holistic level, which is what you're proposing here. I think there may also be one more dimension to this. So we were working with a large telecommunications provider and working with a strategic account manager who had insisted that they had 100% wallet share within a particular customer. Mm-hmm. And so we did a little bit of a deeper dive with management into this particular account and what the strategic account manager said. And the SAM had actually been with the company for 15 years, was a long-time top performer, and very comfortable selling specific telecom solutions.
Right.
But what had happened is, over the last 5 years, this telecommunications company had invested very heavily in bringing cloud solutions, networking, storage, security solutions to wrap around their communications, so that while it was true that this SAM had 100% of the spend within an account, it was only with what that SAM was comfortable with, which was the telecom solutions. If you looked at the rapid growth of this telecom company's portfolio over the last 5 years, the reality was the wallet share was less than a third, because the rep just wasn't perceiving all the other solutions as important because it wasn't where he came from. So I think there may be
or he might just have been really, he might have been really uncomfortable going into those other areas, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do this research, Mark?
Well, yeah, so I mean, we have at Forrester, we've got tons of ongoing access to public financial records, and we're constantly looking at that information from the standpoint of how companies are making decisions about technology in particular. But I think the message here is, which I know you get, is how much money are you leaving on the table, right? So I would ask the audience, how much money is your company leaving on the table with accounts where you just don't have visibility, or your reps don't have visibility into what the real opportunity is, and where you don't have an executable plan in place to pursue that business? So the thing is, companies like FedEx are very complex, Information resources and services are available to help you figure them out. These accounts are entirely knowable just to click through some of the public information that's online about, from FedEx, not to mention the third-party resources that are out there that provide some great information as to who's who and how companies are structured. So the thing is, we need better information for our salespeople, for our sales leadership, for our sales management, for sales operations, and we've got to use that kind of information to develop better account plans. So to get this right, again, your marketing, sales ops, sales leadership need to come together to inventory your key accounts and then use information sources to understand their legal, financial, and organizational structures. This is hard work, but it's the only way to start to realize your opportunities and align your resources appropriately. Then get into the details of each of your key accounts with your sales teams and get real about your current wallet share. To your point, Tim, what is the real wallet share? Where do other opportunities exist? And build sound and accountable plans to pursue the expanded opportunities. In other words, it's okay to identify that we haven't penetrated these other areas of opportunity, but if we don't create accountability for salespeople and the rest of the organization, plans won't mean a whole lot.
So this is the only thing that I want to add to that is, this is hard work, frankly, but the fruit of it is enormous. I mean, you talk about that $395 million and they're only getting 1% of it. What investment on our side as a vendor would it take to start harvesting 5%, even 10%, which is huge. But it is hard work, and frankly, what you're talking about here, I see a lot of times as the starting point. One additional step that people might have to make then is, Mark, one of the things you talked earlier on, which is, where's the budget live to spend these things? Because the budget sometimes may be in one legal entity who's purchasing for a different legal entity. So in order to optimize your dollars, you may have to actually penetrate two separate legal entities to get one deal. The other thing that I've sometimes seen in our accounts, and this is, I used to call on Bank of America a long, long time ago, back when I was skinny and had hair. And the thing that, the thing that I noticed with them is, even though the headquarters was in Charlotte, their data centers were in Charlotte, Dallas, and San Francisco. And they were all within one legal entity, which was the IT Services Corp. But the guys in Dallas and the folks over in San Francisco, they had independent buying authority to buy things for their particular data centers. So, that legal entity is the perfect starting point. But sometimes you have to go that next level to make sure, especially with these big, global, highly complex organizations.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely. There are only 5. Let's get into account growth strategies. There are only 5 ways, as I mentioned in the agenda, to sell more business into your key accounts. I'm going to share those strategies momentarily, but first, let's understand who your buyers are and why they would buy from you in the first place. This title might seem obvious, but it's really not. Through extensive research that we've been doing for over 5 years, Forrester has identified 4 distinct patterns of decision-making by buyers who are involved in allocating resources and funds to meet a specific type of business goal. What we call buyer archetypes, these 4 different patterns, if you will, are determined by the outcome motivations of the people who are involved in the decision and the information that they require to make their decisions. So I'll go through this quickly. In the bottom left, we have buyers who are tasked to purchase a product or service as efficiently as possible. They have limited budget. They've already done their research before contacting a salesperson. They just need a rep to give them specs, pricing, or delivery information they need to make a decision between vendors, which, by the way, is usually based on price. So it's the prototypical procurement type buyer, or individual small purchase buyer. In the top left, we have a sourcing professional or a sourcing group who are looking to consolidate purchasing across multiple buying centers from many vendors to one or a couple in order to save cost and streamline their corporate purchasing processes. And they need salespeople who understand procurement and governance process and can assemble a financial case for purchasing and providing rather a large volume of products or services. And they also need to have a credible plan to reduce their risk when they migrate from one vendor to another. In the bottom right, we have leaders of business functions. So now we're getting really into executive buyers. And they're looking to fix a business process or a workflow or other performance issue. They oftentimes have to influence other leaders to contribute funding, to your point, Tim, to solve an issue that affects more than one business group. There are usually multiple people who contribute input into the decision. So these buyers need salespeople with relevant expertise who can help diagnose and solve their problems. That these reps are problem solvers, or that's what those buyers need. And then last, in the top right in terms of these buyer archetypes, are senior executives or board members and their teams. And they're looking to change the trajectory of their entire business. They've got access to virtually unlimited funds through the board to change the direction of that company. And when they're working with salespeople, what they value is experience, business savvy, salespeople who understand how to lead initiatives to transform a business. So your team may sell to one or more of these types of buyer archetypes, but to determine your strategy for account growth, it's important to understand your current and desired relationships. A key part of the account planning process is identifying and categorizing the types of relationships you have in your key accounts. We observe that lots of key account relationships are stuck in this bottom left with procurement buyers who are price focused. And if you sell commodity offerings, and this is where you must sell, then the two growth strategies that you have available with these buyers are to either enrich and sell more of the same products to them, to those same buyers, or sell other products to these same buyers. In other words, add more portfolio sales to those same buyers. To build more volume, but not really address your margin issues, you could also equip your salespeople with the skills and tools to execute on the extend strategy to help those sourcing groups I mentioned consolidate spending across multiple buying centers to your company. Most of the companies that we talk to, though, want to move their relationships from transactional, low-margin business to larger revenue and higher margin deals with higher altitude buyers. And the only way to do that is to either extend by getting your salespeople focused on working with executive buyers who are trying to solve complex business problems, and I meant to say expand, I'm sorry, or elevate to working with the executive committee and their teams on those cross-organizational transformation projects. And I want to mention that oftentimes when I share this model, this framework, people instantly gravitate to that top right. But quite frankly, the Elevate strategy is really mostly reserved for the Accentures and IBMs of the world who have true business transformation capabilities and very, very business savvy sales teams. In any case, those are your 5 strategies for growing key accounts. Again, planning for growth starts with honestly assessing your current relationships within all of the entities in an account and understanding what motivates their decisions. I do have a report published that describes these buyers in more detail if you'd like to contact me about that. Then determine a realistic and phased plan to move your relationships to the buyers in the kind of business that you want to be focused on. Realize that this is almost always requiring new skills and different kinds of messaging and content to help people, salespeople, align with these different kinds of buyers. Tim, you and I have talked about this a bunch, and I know that you're doing some work with clients on this. So would you like to share some of that?
Yeah, Mark, I've got a couple of mock-ups on the next couple of slides that talk about this. And so, you know, what you're talking about there is what I call a segmentation exercise, or divvying up your customers. You know, getting away from the old, hey, our biggest customers should be our focus, because frankly, there's some probably really big companies out there that you don't have a lot of spend with who should be targets. So how do you segment your customers effectively? And we look at, for our customers, typically they do two levels of segmentation. First, they do a macro level segmentation, which is to look at all of their portfolio of accounts and figure out which ones should they even be investing in. Right? There's only 168 hours in a week. You know, which of my accounts should I be focusing on? Where's the best opportunity? And one of the tools a lot of our customers will use, and this is just a simple mock-up from one of our customers, is they look at it on a perspective of performance today, left to right, versus potential or future performance. So what you find is in the bottom left quadrant, you've got customers that, frankly, they don't spend a lot with us today, but even if we got 100% wallet share, there wouldn't be a lot more. All the way out, if you move straight across to the right, you've got customers who spend a lot with us today, but for one reason or another, we can't get a lot more out of them. Let's say they've already got an enterprise unlimited use license agreement, or there's been a changing of the guard and we don't have relationships to expand, or any of a number of reasons. And so if you do a segmentation of your accounts first, or your territory first, so that you can really focus on the accounts in the upper right and the upper left, which is where the additional revenue opportunities are. And that's what we call macro segmentation. And then you're coming down to the specific, in a specific account, looking at the specific sales strategy for the different business units in the account. And we took one of these from one of our existing customers and used your FedEx example to say, okay, let's look at our penetration levels, you know, within that account, going vertically from bottom to top. And then also let's look at the types of solutions we sell, from very tactical solutions, you know, that bottom left, Mark, that you were talking about, pipes, valves, and fittings. You know, everybody knows how to buy copper piping. There's not a lot that you can do to kind of change that game to what are our more strategic solutions. And so by mapping out your buying centers within your account, you can kind of determine, based upon relationship, penetration, and tactical nature of the solutions, and or strategic nature of your solutions, what kind of sales and account strategy you should take to each of those buying centers. Because, as I'm very fond of saying, one size does not fit all. And if you're not aligned to the solution and the buyer speaking the same language, you've got some big issues. So these are a couple of ways that our customers are leveraging our technology, is to analyze where and how to penetrate. I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, look at those three different scenarios, just using a basic chart and a set of criteria to really get deeper on understanding our accounts. You know, it gets awfully easy going year to year with a set of accounts that we've had for a while to make assumptions. And I think, going back to your example of the telecom rep, the management team, you know, it can be very easy to look at an account and think, you know what, they've been with us a long time. We've got a great relationship, and just not see the reality of how things have evolved. So looking at things in multiple dimensions, as you sort of laid out here, is such a great ongoing exercise to do with all of your key accounts. So I love this this introductory slide. The answer is buyer empathy. What's your question? You know, again, this comes down to understanding buyers at a different level, at a deeper level. You know, almost every sales organization would like their salespeople selling to more senior level executives. And the reality is today that those salespeople, all of your salespeople out there, and I'm not saying every one of them, but you'll see the statistics shortly. All of the salespeople who are calling on executive buyers are less aligned with those buyers in their decision-making process than ever before. There's a huge chasm that has developed. So let me show you this. To have success, first of all, understand how do we best align with executive buyers. To have success selling to executives in these in companies, we need to understand what creates value for them. We surveyed over the course of the last 5 or 6 years we've been doing this actually. Most recently we surveyed 400 executive level buyers and interviewed over 100 of them to get their perspectives on what they consider valuable when they meet with vendor salespeople. The top 3 attributes that executive buyers consider valuable in meetings with salespeople are, number 1, understanding their business issues and getting clear, prescriptive communications. The number 1 attribute executive buyers value in salespeople is that they understand their business problems and can clearly communicate how to address them. Makes sense, right? Number 2 is repeatable, proven approaches to solving problems. Executive buyers value information and knowledge that will help them systematically solve the root business problems across functions and processes instead of treating symptoms in silos. And I'm always surprised at how quickly organizations are and decision makers within organizations to jump toward a solution without really understanding the root cause of challenges that they're having. And thirdly, insightful ideas that change their thinking. You know, there's all of the challenger sales method. There's so much evidence out there and so much discussion today around this. You know, while information about your products and services is very easily found on the internet, it's really difficult for executives to see all of the barriers that stand in the way of their initiatives getting executed. So executive buyers value unique, fresh insights that help them think through their problems and about their problems in new ways. These top 3 attributes that executive buyers consider to be valuable in sales meetings remain the same, by the way, across global geographies, across business functions. I'm talking about marketing, finance, legal, senior management, sales, human resources. It doesn't matter. And they remain the same across organizational altitudes. In other words, the level the person is within the organization, from manager up through C-level. So here's the reality. You know, unfortunately, executive buyers tell us that the agenda of 80% of the salespeople I meet with is focused on pitching their products. But you got to realize executives really could not care less about your products, except as they're part of a solution to solving problems. Executives tell us that reps aren't prepared to have discussions with them that are focused on their challenges. So think about what they value and how far off we are when 80% of the reps that show up aren't focused on solving problems and communicating new, fresh ideas about how to solve them. So here's the implication of this. As a result of the misalignment with these buyer expectations, most people lose potential opportunities in their very first meeting. In global IT global IT and business buyers tell us that on average only 1 in 4 reps earn a follow-on meeting. And look at the figure on the bottom. In the US, 10% of salespeople get a follow-on meeting after their first meeting with an executive. In other words, 90% of first meetings with executive buyers fail to engage those buyers in a follow-on meeting. And hopefully now you know why. We're not focused on helping them solve problems.
It's that age-old thing, right? You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Absolutely. So now sometimes it's not a total flush, right? Sometimes reps get delegated. And reps get delegated to the people that they sound like. You know, if you're talking about technical details, you're going to get sent to a technical buyer. But not only, by the way, do you get delegated to the people that you sound like, you also get relegated to the spending authority of the people that you get delegated to as well. So, you know, being prepared to talk about business challenges and being empathetic about that particular buyer and their role and the challenges that they have, and being insightful it is absolutely crucial to being able to access larger amounts of funding in your key accounts. And I want to say this is not just on your reps, okay? This is on the entire supply chain behind sales to prepare salespeople with the right skills, the right knowledge, the behaviors, the messaging and content that they need as well to have conversations that executive buyers find valuable. So, you know, if we know that we need to have relevant, valuable conversations up and down a customer's organization, then clearly we've got work to do in companies based upon these statistics. Tim, do you want to add anything here?
Mark, I absolutely do. Right. This is one of the things that I really harp on even with my sales team is you've got a message to the people that you're talking to. Right. So if you're talking at the bottom, go back to your slide for just a second before we go forward, Mark. Now on this slide, if you're talking to somebody about disaster recovery, right, as it relates to business continuity, if you start talking about the really amazing, you know, you've got 7 data centers scattered around the world on every single continent. If you talk about the high-speed network to your disaster recovery site, you know, and the 368,000-bit encryption that you use, right? That conversation is at the very base of this particular pyramid, right? The conversation that you have to have at the top of the pyramid is about, you know, Mr. CIO, I understand that for every minute of downtime, it costs you $12 million, right? That's a conversation you have at the top of the pyramid. And it's business relevant. That's a conversation the CIO wants to have. That's not the conversation that the manager of disaster recovery wants to have, right? That's not what they care about. So the messaging is important. And Mark, the term you used, your entire supply chain to equip the sales teams, that's the thing that's really crucial, is if we keep teaching, you know, it seems to me 80% of our training for salespeople is about our products.
Yep.
Right? And only
yes,
20%, and only about 20% is about the problems that our customers experience that we solve. And the same ratio oftentimes to me seems applies to marketing and our marketing literature, right? You know, I don't need to equip my sales rep with brochures. Our customers can get those off the website and read them at will. I need my business teams to have a connected conversation. So now I'd say go forward to the next slide, because, you know, up at the top of the level, the C-level folks have a business strategy, right, or a series of strategic goals, and then they're going to put some strategies in place, and then lower on down there will be initiatives and tactics. And so the messaging is connected up and down the chain. The thing is that we need our sales enablement teams and our marketing teams to equip the sellers to have those messages and that conversation at every level, because it's a network. It's an interconnected nature to all these things. And that's what we really need to equip our teams with, and make sure that the teams can understand the customer's overarching strategy and where they're going directionally, and then what infrastructure and pieces they're putting in place to get there so that they have the right conversation. If they understand the interconnectedness of strategic to tactical, then which people care about it, they can have great conversations at every level. And so collaborating around a visualization of the customer's business strategy is a great way to have a conversation, because at the bottom of the pyramid, you can talk about technical things, and at the top of the pyramid, you talk about business value. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's great, and a really good segue to, you know, the changes that we need to make or help salespeople make. So, you know, part of the account planning process in overall sales planning is to understand where we're going from the perspective of moving those relationships and ensuring that we close gaps in skills and knowledge and behavior and content to help reps align with what different buyers need from them. It was occurring to me when you were talking that, again, there's very much of a one-size-fits-all approach in the organizations that I've been talking to for several years, and in terms of how they equip strategic account groups or global account groups or key account groups or their geographic territory reps. And yet, these different groups need very different kinds of skills, behaviors, and resources, including technology solutions for planning, by the way, to help them be effective. So anyway, if your account strategy is to expand into the account by focusing on solving business challenges with executive buyers, you can't expect your strategy to get executed successfully if you've got a transactional rep assigned to it, and you don't impact their capacity to engage with clients in the right way. So part of your planning has to incorporate helping reps to get out of their comfort zones, as we talked about earlier, and call on new buyers like finance or operations, helping reps to look at accounts more comprehensively and creating viable strategies and plans. And you've got to get your organization behind providing sales content, as you mentioned, Tim, that's valuable to specific buyers to help execute on strategies that have been chosen to grow a key account. It's not good enough to just have generic content. We've got to focus on who are those buyers and what content, what information, what insights do those buyers at those altitudes and in those roles really need. It's part of the account and overall planning process for your organization. Let me go into the last piece of this conversation that we wanted to work through today, and that's embracing your customer's decision process. In the title of this webinar, we said that your customers have changed and so must your planning. So let's look at how sales relationships have massively changed based upon how your customers have changed. In the past, salespeople found a buyer with budget, authority, need, and a timeline for purchasing, and they sold a product or service that met some need. It's the old BANT, budget, authority, need, and timeline. Then in the 90s, buyers had spending authority taken away from them, and it moved up the organization. So salespeople needed to work with a sponsor and then get to a buyer who could actually approve the purchase. The biggest change that we see today is that more buyers are involved in the decisions than ever before. Decisions about complex problems are made within what we call agreement networks that involve many, many people. So there are multiple selling efforts within a sale. This is in part, by the way, because decisions involve those processes and workflows that I mentioned early that tend to cross departmental boundaries. But we also see that higher level executives are involved in, and I'm talking about C-level, are involved in more, if not virtually all expenditures or expenditure decisions. All the time I'm talking with organizations that are astounded at how low a dollar volume of a purchase is being looked at by CEOs and CFOs. They're reviewing even really small expenditures and declining deals at all expenditure sizes at the 11th hour when people on their teams thought that they had the authority and the budget for the purchase. So it's not as if there were never these complex decisions. It's just that now multiple people being involved in a decision is more the norm than the exception. And of course, your salespeople have to be prepared to understand and navigate these complex agreement networks in order to execute on strategies that involve anything but really selling to procurement buyers.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, Tim.
There's a couple of things that, I'm going to do a little throwback Thursday. Like, let's roll back to when I was a young sales guy, right, back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I could remember that a single director in IT could approve a purchase up to about $50,000. And if you got to
Exactly.
VP level, they could approve maybe up to $100,000. You know, what we're seeing today in all of our customers and everywhere we go is that, you know, that dollar level is A, dropped, and then B, even if it's budgeted, even if the purchase of your solution is budgeted, it's still got to get approved after you've made that decision to buy, right? So if
Right.
somebody does an RFP that says, hey, we want to go out and buy a sales effectiveness solution, we've got the dollars in the budget, you still got to go before the CFO and justify that expenditure again after you defended it for, you know, budgeting purposes the year before. So, you know, that extra, you know, that extra level of approval and oversight going up the chain is gaining just tremendous scrutiny and slowing deals down.
Right. And elevating the risk for not only your salespeople, but also the buyers, right? I mean, think of all of the time along, you know, a quote buyer journey, end quote. All of the time of all of the people that are involved in contributing to a decision, and then again, including the reps and the reps team, and then it gets to the 11th hour, and a C-level executive pulls the plug on the whole thing and reallocates the funding to something completely unrelated. It's just a reality of business today. But clearly, the higher we can move within the organization in key accounts, the better from the standpoint of the accuracy of you know, information that we have to make our decisions on as to whether this is something that we should even pursue. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap this up now with just one last slide of mine, and that's just talking about these agreement networks a little bit more. So again, it's complex decision making, complex selling isn't anything new, but it has increased in frequency hugely. A lot of companies may feel or recognize that complexity of decision making has increased, but they really haven't adapted to this dynamic. I see it every day. So to help your reps understand and embrace your customers' decision making process, they need help to understand what altitude of buyers will be involved in decisions in the strategy that you're pursuing. In other words, if you have a set of services, solutions, and you know, you've sold these in many companies, look at who was involved in those decisions. What altitude level were they at? Where did the budget come from? What were the objectives or the outcomes that those particular buyers in that agreement network were seeking? You know, there are implications there for how you go about selling, and salespeople need these insights. Your salespeople also have to learn that who the common roles will be. So now I'm talking not just about altitude, but what are the functions? Is it marketing? Is it an IT role? Is it the security organization? Who will be involved? And so specific roles. And how do your solutions specifically help or impact those roles? Because your salespeople have to be able to tune their communications to those specific roles within the agreement network, because lots of people can say no today. It's just reality. We've got to make sure that we're engaging each of those buyers effectively. So when you're account planning, consider all of the people that will need to be contacted and engaged with, and consider, again, how these relationships need to evolve in order to grow your key accounts. Think back to those 5 strategies I mentioned. Tim, I know you had some final thoughts on mapping those relationships.
Yeah, Mark, and the points that you're making here are crucial. And we're just showing a sample from our technology, but the real key is to make this a team effort. So many of our customers, and literally yesterday I was talking to a life sciences company. They have 5 different business units. Each of those business units has different commercial sales representatives calling on the same large customers, or hospitals actually. So, they need tools if they're going to execute to make sure that they can not just, optimize to make sure that they've got the messaging and they understand where they've got relationships, but also where they've got relationships that they can leverage from their peers. So, whether you're talking to one of our financial services customers or technology customers or life sciences customers, myriads of different people in your organization probably have relationships in that account if you've got a large selling team. And so how do you collaborate to make sure that you can leverage other people's networks to gain access and navigate the agreement network? But also, just from a consistency of execution, I remember 5 years ago I was working with a financial services company who sold technology, and they said that they had this problem where they'd gotten called by the senior vice president at the Bank of New York. And he had a meeting on Monday where a guy walked in and said, "Hi, I'm your account executive." And then the next day, he had a meeting where a different person walked in from the same company and said, "Hi, I'm your account executive." And later that same day, he had a third meeting with a third person who yet again proclaimed that, "Hi, I'm your account executive," which, those kind of things make you look really silly and cause you to lose credibility in front of executives. So, and that was just an example, right? It's something that happens a lot of times in large corporations. So, not just collaboration for mutual gain, but also to make sure that everybody's executing consistently and knows what your peers are doing so that you can execute as a team.
Yeah, great points. So, key takeaways. Our objective really is to help you understand that growing key accounts requires a lot of insight and information and effort and planning. And this isn't just on salespeople. It's easy to point the finger at salespeople and say, why aren't they growing the accounts? But I hope that you're seeing that this is an effort that has to happen across the organization, against that supply chain to the sales organization. We've got to help salespeople make these transitions. Inventory account relationships and develop well-defined strategies for growth. You were going to say something, Tim?
No, I think
you just took a breath. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a loud breather.
Okay. All right. So define your strategies for engaging executive buyers and decision-making teams for bigger, higher margin business that it can't be executed on unless we prepare reps to engage these buyers in business conversations. And we've got to help them navigate and engage the multiple buyers who contribute not only to the decision but also to funding purchases. Ultimately, reps need better information, they need better support, and they need planning tools and processes that bring discipline and objectivity and accuracy to growing key accounts. The good news is this is all available and possible, but it's up to you to help your salespeople make it happen. And of course, companies like Forrester and Revigi are here to help you succeed.